All right, we are getting somewhere. Where that somewhere is, I'm not exactly sure yet. Welcome back to the Lost Cause Ranch, and today is a good day because we are working on the LR4 truck, and spoiler alert, it moved out of the shop without assistance. So it is a monumental day in that project, but as you can probably hear in my voice, I kinda lost it. My mom always told me I talk too much, and I guess this whole channel is living proof of that, and it finally caught up to me, and it's just a rough week. I swear Jamie isn't beating me, even though she probably should. But yeah, this definitely wasn't from me doing something stupid. That would never happen. It's been a rough week around here. As you can hear, I've been feeling it this week. And to be honest, the next little bit of the video is a little lower energy than normal, and you're not gonna hurt my feelings if you wanna just hop ahead to the spicy bits right at this time, where we start getting that mess of modules plugged into the LR4 and fired up for the first time since we cut it in half. With that being said, let's dive into getting this thing going. The intro is getting filmed after the fact, and I am just elated with how today went. So I think the next best step on the LR4 truck is to just get everything put together, and our goal for today is to fire this thing up, air this thing up, and get a real look at how it's gonna look. Get a real look at how it's gonna look. But no, I really wanna see the truck at its ride height. It's kinda goofy looking, all lowered and stanced out. The other reason I wanna put it all together is we have Merlin up and running. So in case I need it, it is gonna be a good reference point on reassembly. I should be all right, but it has been months since we took the LR4 truck apart. So in case I need to know where something like, say, that goes, I can just look here. So that means we need to dig our massive collection of parts out of the storage container. We stuffed a large amount of the LR4 away in there. Like I said, a large amount. Kind of forgot how much I took off of it. So it is quite the load of stuff to throw back on there. I don't exactly remember taking that much stuff off, but it shouldn't be bad. I tucked some of the wiring out of the way. We're getting everything kind of organized again. We just need to get our trays in side to side. Then we'll be able to start assembling the front end before we get this thing in the air and get the rest of it all buttoned up. I really cannot wait to see this thing at ride height. And before we plug up more of the front end, we got a fresh belt. We're gonna stick that on. It's just much easier when you don't have a radiator in the way. But we also went ahead and got our winch hooked back up. Everything for the control pack is wired back in and routed through up over towards the battery. Considerably easier without everything in the way. So we're gonna throw the fan belt on, which is a stretch belt. Sometimes without the tool, we can get this. Now we can swing our coolers into place. We just got my favorite little pins to put in. Those hold the top of the radiator in place, and they just click in. Slick. And what's the rule? Light tap. It's not going anywhere. So fast forward a little bit, and we are just about buttoned up underneath the hood. I mean, pretty much all we got to do is stick a battery in it. Well, there might be a few more things than that. We got this side still opened up. We didn't stick the airbox in this side yet. I have that AC line to get installed. That goes from the compressor down low to the evaporator back here. And I probably should have stuck that on before I stuck the body on. Now we're gonna have to do some fishing down below. Would have cleared a lot easier had I done it in the correct order. But the good news is we're running out of parts over here. So I think we're at the point where I should get it up in the air. and we can start buttoning up stuff down below. We have all the brake lines to take care of, and probably some other stuff. I don't quite remember. I mean, we could take this off, definitely. It's just gonna run from here on out, right? So I think we can snake this line up through next to the strut here, maybe. I really should have did that before we put the body on. Guess I'll get this out of the way and see what I can accomplish here. What a frickin' mess that was. But it's in. We also have a bunch of these grounds all around to reconnect. There's a few just connecting chassis to body, make sure everything's all happy. And I guess since we have the wheel off, get our brake lines reconnected and start that process. I was gonna leave the wheels on, but kind of forgot about the brakes. We can hook all the lines up with the wheels attached. Just be a little bit harder to bleed the brakes with the wheels in the way. Which I'm sure they'll probably need to be bled, being the lines haven't been connected for 3 months or so. 4 months. Brake lines are all hooked up, but as it turns out, they don't quite fit the same if you don't have the body to run them along, which is fine. I'm gonna remake these rear lines anyways. So once we pull the flatbed back off, we will straighten that situation out. We'll be able to run them much more efficiently than we could. They'll be a lot shorter. But speaking of shorter, one thing that can't be is in here. We need to start cutting. If you remember when we pulled the body off initially, there's that massive plug in the back by the driver's rear wheel. We have that section started, but we just need to get a few more things sorted out and stretch back a little further. So it's right there, and we need to hit there. It's just an intertwined mess, which is all right. We'll get it sorted. That's my confidence side. Let's see if that gained us enough. I'd really rather not have to extend that out. What a freaking nightmare this is. You know what we might be able to do? There's the ticket. We can stretch that back towards the front. That'll work. We'll just make a new bracket for that if everything works out. What a freaking thing to have to figure out. Done. And you know what's always a very fun job? That is getting your brakes back in order after leaving the system unhooked and letting it drain for months and months on end. So we got the right rear bleeder cracked back here. As you can see, nothing's coming out yet. So what we're gonna do is hook up the pressure bleeder. This is gonna make it a tiny bit easier than, say, pumping it with your foot. That would take quite a few pumps on this deal. So we're gonna put this at 10 to 15 PSI. Then we can see some air kind of spitting out. It's gonna take a little bit of time here until we get a stream. There's gonna be a lot of air in the line, so let that guy kind of drip for a little bit. Make sure we got all the air out of this line. This may take a couple of rounds of doing to get it exactly right. It looks like we're to clear, clean fluid. So now say you don't have a pressure bleeder to do this job, I would just recommend, if you were this far into the brake system and having everything disconnected and letting it drain, to go buy a brake bleeder. But say we didn't have one, I would go ahead and crack all the lines and let it gravity bleed as long as you could. Then you're just gonna have to get your buddy who has a nice strong calf muscle and have him pump it a bunch of times for you until you get all the air out. But as you see, this left rear is coming to life a lot quicker than the right rear did. A lot of the initial air push with that one. And the way you go about bleeding brakes is start at the furthest caliper from the master cylinder. So on a left-hand drive vehicle like this, it's going to be the right rear, then you go left rear, then you go right front, left front. So furthest to closest, we're still spitting. And we're pushing a lot of old fluid out. It's got a real dark amber color. So this is gonna just be good all the way around. I just remember before having a pressure bleeder like that, this used to be a nightmare job. And something like this is only like 60 bucks on Amazon. At the shop, we used to run a Motive one. That was like a couple $100. But for the few times that I do this anymore, this has been working perfectly. Now we don't have much for seats in here to sit and try the brakes, but let's see if we got a pedal. Yeah, that feels reasonable. Now, like I said, we'll probably have to do that again, but we'll wait until we make those rear lines to worry about it too much, because we would just be redoing it again. As much as I like to double my workload, it's just not necessary. But holy cow, is it gonna be nice to actually have brakes. It'll look a little bit better than my last little fiasco. You know, the emergency brake I used earlier this week. But with the brakes sorted out, we can kind of close up this side of the engine bay. And I think we're running out of stuff to do. So we have all our brakes hooked up, the wiring hooked up to the rear, everything under the engine bay. Be honest, guys, I think we might just be down to getting the front bumper and headlights and whatnot on here. Well, I guess we might need to plug a couple modules in yet. With it being so long since we had this apart, I just feel like I'm forgetting something, but this really should be getting pretty close to the end of this. And this is awful exciting because this is when it starts looking the part. You know, this little Amazon winch that we put on years ago with our little homemade winch plate has been the single most useful thing I've ever purchased. Can't believe how well that thing's worked. You just don't typically expect that out of a $300 winch. Now these aren't staying on it, but I figure when in Rome, so we may as well throw them back on to get a full picture. I mean, I don't know if you are, but I am pretty excited to see this thing at ride height and not in shambles. We're gonna do the real important things here. Yes, install the headlights. Very critical to the success of this project. Still probably the easiest headlights you can install, which also, I guess, makes them some of the easiest headlights to steal. Although we don't really have that issue as much in the US, but looks like some of you UK guys have a problem with people just going in, yanking those tabs, and just pulling your expensive headlight out. Seeing it tied together with the front end on is pretty freaking awesome. But before I get too far ahead of myself, we should probably stick a little oil in this thing. With the way my brain's been working lately, I'd probably forget. Then we'd just be in the same position we started the whole project out in. And while we're doing this, funny little story, you know how I mentioned earlier that my mom said I talk too much? Well, that stems from back when I was a kid and dinner time. I mean, you guys probably picked up, I enjoyed talking. But back to when I was probably 10, 11, 12 years old, most nights my mom would have to set a timer, like one of those old school kitchen ones that you wound up, for me to finish dinner after everyone else had already finished. Because, as it turns out, I didn't really eat fast because I spent all that time talking instead of eating. So I'd have to sit there by myself, get my little half-hour timer out, and if I didn't finish In that time, I earned myself some additional chores. Obviously, if you watch my videos, that was a failed punishment because I still talk too much. Now we got the infamous box of modules sitting there. And that is so, from inside the cab here, we could just start grabbing them and plugging them in. So last week, we went ahead and sorted them all out from right to left. So we should be able to knock through these pretty quick. One down, just a couple more to go. All right, we are getting somewhere. Where that somewhere is, I'm not exactly sure yet, but we have some extra plugs and we have some extra grounds. I should probably try and tie those in somewhere. Obviously, we need to sort all that out, and when we make that rear plate to mount all the modules, we'll be able to clean up that wiring quite a bit and route it nicer. I don't know how great it's gonna look until we decide to pare it all down and kind of shorten it to the correct lengths, but that's a down the road thing. What I wanna do now is get a battery in this and just see where we stand, like if anything at all works. Well, the battery's hooked up and nothing exploded. I don't smell anything funny, so we'll call that a win for now. The cluster lights up, still shows the same mileage it showed before, so that's good as well. See, I've never cut a car in half before. Well, I guess I should rephrase that. I've never cut a car in half before and then put it back together and went on to make it a working vehicle. So we're gonna, smart key not found. Of course, the key battery's probably dead. Ignition's on. We got anything on? I guess let's see if it cranks. Gear shift not in park. That's 100% my fault. I didn't realize I had the shifter in park. I have the transmission in neutral, so when I hook the shift cable back up, we're gonna be mismatched because transmission's in neutral, gear shift is in park, so we'll correct that real quick here. So that'll be incorrect. So what way is it? That should be it. So we should be on park in the transmission and the shifter now. So we should be able to lock that down. And while we have it at eye level, I can explain our little pass-through toolbox storage area a little better. I may not have completely illustrated exactly what we were doing. Some of you had questions about it, but you can see the toolbox that is mounted on the other side. That will get a hole cut into it and a bolt pattern that matches this flange here. And that flange will get welded on to the side of the pass-through toolbox, and the back side of the toolbox will be bolted directly to this with that corresponding opening. So that way when we pop these guys open, you're gonna see all the way through. So anything long, we can just throw through from either side. Just figured since it was in the air, it'd be easier to clarify that. Now that the shifter's where it needs to be, let's see if this thing cranks. We have a mess of warnings going on here. Tire pressure, suspension fault, rain response, brake fluid low, stability control, missing a tailgate, emergency brake assist not available, fuel level low. I don't think it's low, so we might have something going on there. I got the scan tool hooked up and we're gonna see what we have for faults. Obviously gonna be hardly any. It recognized the VIN, so that's good. I don't think I heard the fuel pump go on, and the fact that it's showing 0 miles and no fuel, that may be connected. We're gonna auto scan every module here. So I'm sitting on my makeshift seat here, and we went ahead and cleared a bunch of stuff out. There's still a bunch of stuff in there, but it gives us a baseline of what's actually wrong versus it picking up everything that we unplugged, which was everything. So we're gonna try and fire it up again here. Still having issues with the key. Unfortunately, it's the only key, but we cranked on it long enough before. We should have good oil pressure. It's a little loud with just the exhaust manifolds dumping, but man, it is good to see it lifted up. Although we had to play around a little bit there, there's one thing I didn't quite consider. So it's showing the tailgate and the rear doors are open because they are no longer in existence. And as you know, you can't adjust the suspension level with any doors open. So we had to go in and trick it via the scan tool, but we'll have to sort something out in that area. But holy cow, it is awesome that it's running. I don't know if it's noisy or anything because I couldn't hear a darn thing. Now we got our next problem to overcome. Started parting some of the stuff out on the X5. Not exactly sure if it's gonna move under its own power yet. To be honest, I wasn't actually expecting the LR4 to fire up, so this wasn't gonna be a problem sitting there. At least the LR4 sounds better than this does. One of these times that thing's just gonna grenade when I fire it up. What a freaking win that is for today. Man, I am overjoyed to have that thing driving under its own power. And even better yet, we get to see the thing at freaking ride height. Or I guess what is close to ride height. We're gonna have to sort out that whole doors being open issue. It's not quite sitting as high as it's supposed to. We do need to adjust this front toolbox. It needs to get slid forward a tiny bit. So this front rail will be trimmed about a 1/2 inch. So we need to slide that up about a 1/2 inch. But that gives it a whole different look than it's had this entire time. It's just so much better looking not slammed. Let me know what you guys think now that you can get a little better eye with it in the air. Now mind you, the bed's not mounted in the correct position. It's just sitting in there loose. So don't mind the clearance with the cab. But man, it's just quite a bit different, isn't it? What a freaking day. Now that it works, it is time to get back to work. We'll start finishing everything off. We got the roll bar to finish off inside. We have all the modules to mount, especially since most of them work. I gotta charge the battery and let it sit and figure out the key situation, but it's all sorted enough we can start finishing it out. With that being said, appreciate you guys watching, appreciate you subscribing. We will catch you on the next one, which should be Thursday with a day in the life of a Land Rover hoarder, because I am one. It's a good week when you go from no LR4s running to 2.